foundation of trust. Before we dive in, I'd like to mention that there will be dedicated time at the end of our session to address any questions or comments you have. So please feel free to submit your questions using the QA link, and we'll be sure to cover them during our discussion. This afternoon, I'm delighted to introduce our speakers, Anisha, Shastri, and Joseph Rosario, who bring exceptional expertise to today's session. Anisha serves as the Executive Director at Intense Technology, where she combines her extensive expertise working with enterprises, SMEs, and startups to drive innovative strategies and impactful solutions. Joseph Rosario is the Vice President of American Sales at Intense and brings over 18 years of experience in data governance, data quality, and master data management, helping organizations tackle complex challenges. Together, they'll share some valuable insights drawn from their leadership and industry experience. Let's welcome Anisha and Joseph.
Thanks a lot, Mary.
Thank you so much, and hello, everybody. Good afternoon to all of you. It's pretty late here in India, but good afternoon to all of you, and I hope you have a lovely session ahead. I'm really glad that Datagaps has organized a summit like this, and is trying to emphasize on the importance of why data really matters and why data quality really matters. I know I can't probably do a poll here, but just quoting a Harvard study that I read recently, I read that about 83% of the world's organizations are now trying to do something with AI. In fact, any GTM meeting, Q4 preparing for the next year starts with AI, but unfortunately it ends with data, because your AI initiatives, your business intelligence, your insights, today generative AI has just rapidly taken over the technology world. But if you don't feed the right kind of data into your algorithms, what are you going to get, right? I'll just walk you through a couple of case studies, which really, may seem very, very silly, but these have costed organizations billions of dollars. Has anybody heard of the Samsung fat finger error? Well, Samsung was due to give their employees some shares, and they wanted to give out, I think, about 2 billion won worth of shares, but instead, because of a simple data entry error, they gave out 2 billion shares. Which ultimately was, I think, maybe some 30 times their market cap. And before they could realize, within a 30-minute gap, they found that a few employees had already sold their shares, and that really costed them over 300 million in loss of market cap in just 30 minutes alone. So these kind of data entry issues, they may seem trivial, and they may seem like, okay, these are not problems to solve immediately, but you know that these kind of simple, silly mistakes can have cascading impacts on an organization's reputation, an organization's financial history. The next slide, please, Joy. Unity Technologies. Unity is basically a platform where you can use to develop games, video games. Unity, used some wrong data, some bad data to run, to infuse those into their ad campaigns. The result, they targeted the wrong audiences. Their sales dropped significantly, and that caused a huge impact again on their revenue. They had almost, I think, $110 million hit or something like that. That's almost 1/10 of the organization's overall revenue number, and their shares tanked by about 37%. So while you think that it's important to be focusing on initiatives like generative AI, using LLMs, using SLMs, LAMs, etc., for all your technology initiatives, trying to bring in accuracy into the way you target your market, into the way you cross-sell to your audiences, into the way you bring in efficiency within your organization, you feed garbage in and you get garbage out, right? A study by IDC conducted a few studies, and amongst those, the number one in the US alone, the cost of bad data is almost 3 trillion annually. That's the kind of impact that poor data quality has on decision making for organizations. This number, the second statistic that you see over here says 12% of revenue loss, but I bet that this number is significantly higher. When you don't know who you're targeting, and when you don't know what your decision is based on, that number can just become much larger. And in fact, it found that more than 85% of the world's organizations are not able to currently use their data effectively. You're generating data through multiple sources. If you take a bank, for instance, you're generating data through interactions that your customers have with the bank. You're generating data based on transactions that are conducted. You have information about frauds and blacklisting, and you have regulatory sources, etc. If you don't combine your data from all of these places to give you an accurate picture of where you lie, where your risk profile is at the moment, you're bound to make decisions that will have a cascading impact on how you make decisions as an organization going forward. So between all of you, there are audiences here from manufacturing, from banking, from insurance, from tech as well. Really ask yourselves the question, how do I derive value from my data? How do I get myself to leverage the kind of data that I am generating on a daily basis through my customer interactions, through my partner interactions, through employee interactions, etc. And how do I really leverage on that data to then feed algorithms to help me make more meaningful decisions in the future? Is your data really coming together, or is your data sitting in silos between multiple departments? How can you leverage your data to help cross-sell your customers better? How can you leverage your data to help make critical decisions that will really swing, your market performance? How do you keep up with regulatory demands while ensuring your data really supports you to do that, right? If your data is not accurate, if it's not reliable, if you're not if you can't really trust the data that you're feeding into your algorithms, you cannot trust the data or the decisions that you're making based on the dashboards or the insights engines that you are running. I will now hand it over to Joey. Joey is a very seasoned data professional and has delivered large data management projects for banks, for insurance companies, oil and gas. I will hand it over to Joey to make him walk you through what kind of pitfalls you may potentially face, what kind of challenges you may run through when you are trying to build a data strategy for your organization, and how do you really get to that trusted data set that you can then use to make your decisions. Over to you, Joey.
Thanks a lot, Anisha. Thanks a lot, Mary and Datagaps as well for the session. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or maybe good night to some of you all too. I think what we want to cover, I think Anisha clearly outlined what are the repercussions when we don't pay attention to data quality. Having said that, she also mentioned that, every conversation today, I get into any conversation that I'm talking to leaders of different organizations, be it banks, insurance, telecoms, everything starts with artificial intelligence and stops at data because they're saying, all right, we're already using and the technology is available to everybody. Today, you can look at a bank, you can look at yourselves. Each one of us are using ChatGPT. Sometimes we overuse it. That too is sometimes can become a bane. But having said that, that technology is available to everybody. Now, how do I get the best out of this? For that, we need to feed more accurate data, better data quality to our AIs, to our LLMs to get the right results. Because when we don't feed the right data, we don't get the best possible outcome. And I think that's going to be the huge competitive edge for organizations to get best out of the technology that's made available to everybody. So now with respect to data quality, and that's in the recent past we've noticed that I was reading a Harvard Business Review which also said that about 3% of organizations are actually, up to that benchmark with respect to data quality. The remaining are not. They're still struggling. They're still working to get there. And there are a few challenges with that. Why is it that they're not able to get there? Because one, the large organizations, there are a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And when there are mergers and acquisitions, what also comes together is the technology, is the ecosystems that they bring together. They're sitting on disparate, heterogeneous systems which come together, and then data is haywire. So we work with a large bank. We work with, we're working with a small retailer here doing a pilot, and we know what kind of challenges they have. It is the last mile. They're looking at, let's say I have to deliver, there's a large truck that delivers, goods to this retail chain, and they have to make sure, it's delivered on time. The workers are there, because if the workers are not there to unload and put that into the go down, then the trip that was made to go there, deliver that stuff, and is a waste of money, it's a waste of time. So they have to reschedule the whole thing. So making this data available at the right time is also important. Now, there's also a lot of resistance in organizations to acknowledge data flaws, and that is by virtue of, each one says, I've got my data and I'm the owner of my data and I believe my data is the best. And that comes with a few challenges, because one, they understand and they believe that, I maintain my data at the best possible standards, and they haven't really paid attention to a lot of data quality standards. However, as a larger organization, when it all comes together, they're looking at, okay, can I create an accurate golden record for it, right? And they do it, and every organization does it. It's not that they're not doing it today. But do I have the right golden record for it? Do I have the right mobile number to reach him when I want to? Am I able to identify my existing customers? Am I able to differentiate between my existing customers versus a new customer, right? Integrating diverse source systems. They've got multiple systems sitting in the environment. Any organization has vendors in the thousands. Large organizations have vendors in thousands. So will they be able to bring all this data together? Now, complexity and volume management is another. I know we're working with a bank which has over 100 million customers, and we know what a challenge they have with, complexity involved. One, well, to begin with, in that journey, we also had to work with the data office to look at, all right, do we have all the right stakeholders who are going to partake in this discussion for data quality? Are we willing to walk that difficult mile, that long mile, to say, all right, yes, we'll take ownership, we'll take responsibility and change. So that was the first step. And in this data quality life cycle, data quality framework that we look at, the first stage is to identify stakeholders within the organization, right? For each product, if you look at liabilities, assets, product, everybody, you need all these stakeholders to say, okay, yes, we'll make a change to it. Then you identify critical data elements. You understand the characteristics of this. You identify data quality dimensions. And now with the advent of AI, earlier it would be, you look at data quality dimensions of completeness, accuracy, and stuff like that. But now with AI, you're also looking at additional data quality dimensions, which come into play, like recency, comparability, credibility. All of this adds more value, and this is how it will be a huge competitive edge when you start using these AI and LLMs along with what AI brings to the table. Now, in the implementation phase, you identify which possible framework you want to use for data quality standards. Two, you implement these rules. These rules are for each dimension. You have to implement these rules, which will identify and deliver, and tell the stakeholders, okay, today, let's say I'm doing a DQ rule for, multiple source systems, and I pick up 5 source systems. It will give you a scorecard that will tell you, okay, this, we've got a customer's telephone number, name, and address. However, we see that, the telephone number for the credit card source system is better than the others. So you use that to create a golden record. And that ways, that, because the trust score is higher there, you're able to, use that to get better results from your analytics, better results from your cross-sell, upsell, all the, everything that you want to do with it, you'll get better results. Now, the next stage is, okay, you identified stakeholders, you identified DQ rules, you implemented the same thing, but you also, as a result of that, you also get bad data. Bad data is that, you realize that, okay, there is a mobile number field, there is an address, there is an email address, but I don't have the data in it. Now, can we enhance this? So you look at options to cleanse and standardize this. You build dictionaries. You create reference data masters that will help you standardize this across all systems within the organizations. So that becomes important because then that will also set a path for you to standardize why is bad data coming into the system itself. So you can start working with stakeholders across the organization to arrest these leakages. And that's, of course, a business analyst work with the stakeholders to work and arrest that. But they will also ask for APIs and say, all right, now since we're doing this, can I arrest the leakage at the time of onboarding the customer itself? So yes, we'll be looking at creating APIs, giving them APIs to ensure that bad data is not getting into the system itself. Very importantly, you monitor and publish these reports, right? So you want to look at periodically, how's my data quality trend? Is it improving? Is it decreasing? And at times, critical data elements will move in and move out. So you'll have to restart this whole process of running the life cycle for the data quality framework. Now, very quickly, we'll walk through an example of one of the projects that we've implemented. A large bank, over 100 million customers. Okay, the problem there was that each system had their own data, they trusted their own data, and we had to bring it together. And because of that large volume, they had to move to the cloud. So one is they moved to a cloud platform for all the data to be centralized. From there, they were looking at, can I create a golden record? Because the challenge they had there was that, they were unable to identify existing customers versus a new customer. So it began there, the problem began there because they looked at a lot of abandons on their digital journeys on their portal. Now, to fix that, the study and a business analyst study kind of gave us insights into they are unable to identify these customers because they don't have the right information, right? They're creating a golden record. However, instead of looking at all their systems across their business, they are only looking at let me bring up that screen again. They are only looking at 4 systems and not every other system within the organization. So that was one. 2, they looked at, they created a hierarchy where they said, all right, we are only going to use a credit card system first. We give it the highest priority. Then we give, another system and then the third system. So we had to look at a systematic and scientific approach to give the weightage for each system and how you create the golden record. But that only came after we implemented data quality, where we said, all right, you identify the DQ dimensions, you put in the rules, you get the results, you create a trust score. Only when your trust score is high, then you use that information to create your golden record. So what this leads to is, superior customer experience, because now you're able to identify your customers who already are doing business with you. You're providing services, you're providing products. You want to see, give them more services and more products. Now you're able to target them better. So that was the result of something like this. But I think I'll quickly look at the time. We're ready for any questions and answers that you may have, and we'll be happy to answer them.
I think there are a few questions as well in the Q&A, Joey. Based on your experience, what are the key challenges organizations typically encounter while undertaking a data quality overhaul? Do you want to take it first?
Yeah, sure. So I think every organization, first of all, like we mentioned, you identify the platform. Identifying a platform is important because there are multiple platforms that's available for data quality. You'll have to look at, how do I centralize this data? First of all, for data quality, you can't do it in silos. I can't say, if I have 20 systems inside my organization, do I run data quality for each of them separately? It all has to come together. And you outline the objectives, very importantly. What do you want to achieve with this data quality? What is the result that you want to get? Like in one case, we are saying, okay, they want to identify existing customers versus a new customer. right? It could mean, for another retail distributor that we are talking about. For them, it was, making sure that, the last mile, there are people available to unload a truck, as simple as that. Now, for them, a data quality dimension that will be important for them is credibility, is recency, is accessibility. But for another organization that is looking at, existing customers versus a new customer, and how do I identify for them? For them, they'll be looking at, completeness. They'll be looking at accuracy, recency there too. So it depends on, what the end objective is. And sometimes it will take, multiple stages to implement a data quality project too. And one is you generate one type of scorecard with perhaps 5 data quality dimensions for one team, and they get the results. But maybe for the last mile delivery, you look at, a different set of data quality dimensions to give them better results. So it will depend on the objectives, and then that comes together to give you better results.
So completely agree with what Joey said, and that's on the technology front. But if you also look from a cultural standpoint, the business front, today a lot of industries are seeing a huge consolidation. Like if you look at telecom, if you look at insurance, there is a lot of consolidation happening. And Joey mentioned this, earlier. It's really important to get a culture within the organization top down that wants to take data quality seriously. And also I think it's important to get like a central data house, or a team that is responsible to do this, because every system believes that their data is superior. And when it comes to actually collaborating, a lot of times we've seen that huge delays happen in projects just because departments are fighting amongst each other on, whether they are willing to trust another department's data as much as their own as well. So if there is no top-down focus and top-down vision around this within an organization, it will be difficult to even push a data project through. Let alone be able to select a tool that everybody loves, be able to, run rules, that satisfy every department, etc. So that top-down focus is important. Anisha, what are some best practices that businesses can implement on a daily basis to maintain and improve data quality? I think one fundamental shift that organizations should understand is, the best way to protect your data quality is to ensure no garbage comes in the first place. So when you're collecting your data, how strong can you make your forms? How strong can you make your integrations with, say, your national IDs, SSO, or, Aadhaar, or bringing in the right kind of data into your system in the first place, so that you don't get into this pitfall as well. So, how many times have you guys entered, say, your phone number, but entered, junk characters instead, and the feed will still accept it? So just ensuring that while during ingestion itself, if you can put your checks and balances in place such that you are bringing in the right data, at least, now onwards, I think that's one of the healthiest ways to ensure that you continue to maintain your data quality. Improve on existing data quality, obviously, just like what we spoke up until now. Having regular checks and balances, running your scores regularly, understanding the recency of the data that you're bringing in, and constantly updating your master data. It's not a one-time job. Once you sign on this journey, you've got to ensure that you continue to keep at it so that your data quality remains maintained, for decades to come. How is AI, specifically Gen AI, changing the way our organizations approach data quality and reconciliation? Joey?
Very briefly, I think I touched that when I was talking about how organizations were looking at, data quality earlier. Data quality dimensions they would identify, and, in that domain of data quality, there are about 7 to 8 different data quality dimensions that they look at. But with AI now, you're looking at, possibly a dozen data quality dimensions, and that will be able to change a lot of things that we're doing in the world of data quality. So one is, how do you automate some of these things within or while you're doing a data quality implementation is one step. The other is, for Gen AI to work for you, right? For you to get best possible results out of an LLM, you need to feed the right data to it. So there are two ways to look at it. One is, for me to get better results, I need to feed proper data to my LLMs. But even during the data quality process and the implementation of the same project, we will be able to use a lot of AI to ensure that we improve the quality of data. So some of the examples that we are doing on one of our projects is that we are looking at, all right, can I create cohorts and go after remediating that data? So how do I remediate this data? One is, I look for data within these systems. I look for sending out communications to the end customer to fix data gaps, to fix issues within the data itself. So there are multiple ways to use AI again to enhance the data quality too. So there are two ways, and I hope that answers a lot of questions that that you may have on the applicability of Gen AI for data quality and how do you get best possible results from it.
In fact, I wanted to quote a use case of something that we encountered a couple of years back with one of our customers. They were sending out about maybe close to, I'd say, 10 million messages a day, something like that, 10 million messages a day. And about 2.5 million out of them were bouncing, so 2.5 million messages were failing. And, in the SMS landscape of things, you pay for a message irrespective of whether it fails or is successfully delivered, right? So this organization was spending 2.5 million worth of messages, worth of money, and not getting anything out of it. And we were able to use some of these AI-based remediation techniques to enrich, the quality of mobile numbers, to identify which mobile numbers are bouncing versus not, etc. And I think they realized eventually about $1.5 million worth of dollars worth of savings annually on just fixing this one piece. So not only were they missing targeting their customers, they were also burning money, doing it incorrectly. And a result of this was not just the savings of $1.5 million that they didn't spend inaccurately. They also now were able to actually tap into the right customers and run their cross sells appropriately. And that also saw an increment of about 25% in their cross-sell rates, from what it was before. So really knowing, where your data quality gaps lie, and trying to use AI to remediate some of those issues can help both not just on a cost savings or an operational savings front, but also improve, revenue gen. So, that's the importance of doing this activity.
Very interesting, Anisha. You use the word data gaps. Even I use the word data gaps. I mean, we're talking about data gaps platform too. But I think when we say data gaps, we're also talking about, the problems we have in data, but also this platform data gaps that we are looking at. We see a lot of value when we are taking it to our customers. We are looking at doing pilots. We are looking at, automating testing. We are looking at using use cases of data quality as well on the same platform. So I think that's something that we all want to use, and it's on the cloud. We can all create our IDs and start working with it too.
Absolutely. Joey, there are a bunch of other questions. Joseph, could you elaborate on some ways AI is being applied for data quality management and remediation? I think we covered this, just in the previous one. Anisha and Joey, how can organizations balance data accuracy and governance with the need for speed in a competitive market?
So that's a good one. That's a good one. I mean, let's see, for accuracy is one dimension in data quality, but for data governance itself, I think to begin with, we first have to look at the data office. Have they created a data office? Has the data office defined, what these data standards are going to be, and how you manage data for multiple systems. So I think in this journey of data governance, right, we looked at the banks that we are working with. The data office has defined, what data needs to, how data needs to be defined in the organization. So, for instance, very simple things, a customer name. There was one system that would have customer name stored as, a composite customer name in one field, but another system will have a first name, middle name, and a last name, right? So then we had to look at, okay, now the data office will have to define this for all systems within the organization, saying, okay, everybody should have a first name, middle name, and a last name, right? So these policies will have to be, centrally defined, and then distributed locally to all these systems too. So this is very important. Now, the application of AI there is, everything's available to everybody. So you'll have to look at one, defining these data governance principles across these systems, and accuracy itself. Once you define these, and a lot of times it is because you've got multiple systems. Data governance was earlier in silos for each of these systems. I'm sure they had, their own data dictionaries, their own governances, and how they would store data within these systems. But when they come together, then you need an overarching data governance policy. And I think that's where it becomes important, how your data is defined.
Absolutely. How do you approach tailoring data and AI solutions to meet the unique needs of different types of... I think that question got cut there.
So part of it was in the example that I shared earlier, right, Anisha? One is, it depends on the use case and what result you're going after, right? And each stakeholder will have different needs. So as an outcome, when you're looking at, results, organizations create data marts, right? So you have a set of one data set that will cater to marketing needs, who are looking at, what's my brand going to look like? How is my brand perceived? You could have, another team that's going after campaigns to look at, how I cross-sell and upsell. Now, what data quality standards both these teams need are going to be different. And so the data quality dimensions that they will be after is going to be different from the other. So one of the examples that I shared while I was doing my example and my case study was, if you want to identify existing customers versus new customers, what data quality dimensions are you going to use? But in the example of, that retailer trying to deliver, goods at the go down at the right time, you needed different data quality dimensions of recency, accessibility, all that comes into play. So depending on what the outcome is, you'll have to go after this. And then today, the flexibility of, having platforms on the cloud, having platforms, where you don't need coding, and the organizations can segregate this data into different data marts is the answer to it.
And I think it's also just important to embrace agile practices even during a data quality project, right? You don't want to do everything big bang, at one go. And for a fact that the show must go on, right? Irrespective of what you're doing at the back end to fix your data, your customers are not going to stop engaging with you. You're not going to stop cross-sell campaigns, for instance, etc. So it's important to first identify the set of critical data elements that truly, matter to, by critical data element, I mean, fields, elements across multiple systems, which you need to leverage in order to, run your campaigns or make certain critical decisions. So you decide what you need most importantly first, and you break it down, and then you run it sprint by sprint. You don't wait to do the entire thing at once. That way you get to the market faster. You start making healthier decisions sooner. And then eventually over the course of time you will get to a place where you fix the quality of your data and maintain it consistently. What emerging trends do you see in the future of data management, and how organizations prepare to stay ahead? So, one is definitely a lot of integrations are happening now. So most large organizations, if possible, are trying to depend on government sources for even getting the data and validating the data that they have versus what what is there in government sources. And not every industry has this liberty, though. I'd say maybe banking, insurance, telecom, this is still possible. Retail might not always have access to or logistics, like these industries may not. But as much as possible, first getting accurate data into your system to begin with, and this will happen as much as possible when you stop depending on like manual entry, when you're not depending on humans to enter data. So as much as possible, automating those things, that will help get a steady feed of quality data into your system while you still work on data that's already existing. But at least you ensure that new data that's coming in is clean. That's one. What other trends, Joey?
I earlier as well, we kind of kept saying that one, technology is available to everybody, and that is consistent. I mean, today technology is available for every organization, and the big competitive edge is going to be, what kind of data you have. So, and then you get the results, right? So we can see trends of, one, sentiment analysis. You're looking at, data in motion. Can I monitor the data in motion? Can I get, results for real-time results for my data? So I think these are some important trends that, organizations are going after. Earlier it was, I'm going to look at an end-of-day process. I'm going to look at, data that was maybe a week old. But now it's different. Now it is, you're talking about data in motion and in real time. Will I be able to, look at this point in time, is it relevant? Because maybe there is somebody who's walking past, a store, and you want to give him a customized message at that point in time. So if you do it 2 minutes later, maybe he's gone past it and he's not going to come back there. So how will you be able to make sure you have that data available at the right time? So these are the trends, and this is what everybody's looking at now.
Absolutely. What are the key points? Okay, I lost that question. All right, I think that's it. I think that's about it. I think irrespective of what industry you belong to, it's inevitable. Unless you have the right quality of data being fed into your algorithms, you're not going to be able to make the most reliable decisions. And these decisions may not just have an impact on what you spend on making the decision, but it might also cost you in many other ways. And so while every organization is focusing on how to leverage Gen AI, how to leverage machine learning, etc., please also focus on what kind of data you feed into it. Only then will you see success in the long term. And that's about it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Anisha and Joseph, for sharing your expertise and providing such valuable insights into navigating data quality. We really appreciate all of your examples and all of just the tips that you've given us. To those that have participated here, we hope that you found this session insightful, and we look forward to seeing you in the next session. So please check your pop-up for details or head to the agenda to navigate the session. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.